What is good, y'all? Jared here to review the 3-hour balls-to-the-wall Indian epic Rise, Roar, Revolt, or RRR, or RRR. Now, admittedly, I've seen very few Indian films outside of the Satyajit Ray classics, so I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. I had a superficial understanding that Bollywood films are formally distinct from Western ones in some ways, so I anticipated that my cultural expectations might color my appreciation of the film, but let me tell you, as soon as I saw that opening scene with Raju soldiering through a crowd of thousands of real coordinated extras to capture a single man, I was like, okay, West, East, who cares? This is a real fucking movie. Consider this a spoiler warning here on out, but I wouldn't be too concerned. As with most epics, it's really more about experiencing the drama than having knowledge of the plot points. This movie is part Django Unchained, part Lawrence of Arabia, and part The Searchers, 3 movies that I absolutely adore, so this movie was a huge treat for me. Whereas Django was a revisionist history revenge fantasy that focused on American slavery, and Inglourious Basterds was a revisionist revenge fantasy focusing on Nazi Germany, RRR, or RRR, I'm just going to call it RRR, is a revisionist revenge fantasy that focuses on British imperialism. The film even ends with an entire British military palace exploding, not unlike Candyland Plantation in Django or the movie theater in Inglourious Basterds. Sometimes the British characters seem a bit too mustache twirling in their sadistic, racist evil.
Do you comprehend the value of the bullet in your barrel? And you would want to squander it on brown rubbish.
But even then, I think it attributes to the film's charm. This film isn't trying anything new. The bad guys are very clearly identified as bad, and the good guys are very clearly good. The English people's dialogue isn't written to build memorable, unique characters with singular traits and quirks like from Hans Landa in Inglourious Basterds or Calvin Candy from Django. They're more or less just stand-ins for the evils of a racist foreign policy.
Look at all these brown buggers.
And while elsewhere this would feel like a missed opportunity, it kind of works for this very totemic film that is heavily inspired by India's 2 major Hindu myths. This movie is unapologetic in its dedication to telling a very simple story and a very universal story. It's a familiar tale of love, betrayal, redemption, and the struggle for freedom, and it knows it. There are no shades of gray here. The movie is not trying to charm you with novel ideas or novel approaches to storytelling. It's here to execute on a timeless formula and do it well. Also similar to the Tarantino films, the action is hyper-stylized and awesomely ridiculous, but rather than Tarantino's over-the-top gore that allows the audience to relish in the eradication of these historical villains, there's more of a nationalist flair that animates the action here. Our heroes use flags as protection, or they'll unleash animals from the Indian wild against the occupiers, or one of our protagonists will dress up like a mythic bow-wielding Indian hero. And that's one of the things I really like about this movie. The action isn't just spectacle for spectacle's sake. Oftentimes, when it's just being awesome without having any bearing on theme or character, it can get a little bit tiresome. I mean, even in John Wick 3, a movie that I freaking love, I got bored by the non-stop action by the end. And I mean, yes, things happen in RRR because they're awesome, but they also build on the movie's thematic and symbolic work. For example, there's a motif throughout in which the British strength only comes from the tools and technology that are an extension of their bodies, like guns, whereas our heroes will use their natural body and their natural strength to overcome them. So when we have absolutely crazy yet undeniably awesome scenes, like the one in which our heroes are piled on top of each other, one of them is using their legs, the other one using their arms, it's not only awesome in its absolute craziness, but it resonates on both a thematic and emotional level, with the newly reconciled protagonists now acting as one. The movie's action scenes are not a reprieve from the emotional core of the story, but an extension of it. As I mentioned earlier, this is a highly symbolic movie, and in particular with its dualism. Our 2 characters are associated with 2 separate parts of a whole. Bhim is water, peaceful, he who can maintain a sense of tranquility whilst enduring unimaginable torture, whereas Raju is fire, the revolutionary raging bull motivated by revenge. Bhim is legs, the foundation, the rural identity of the nation, whereas Raju is arms, the offense, the momentum into the future, as he's the one that comes to use the oppressor's own tools against them. There are also a lot of meaningful objects, be they necklaces or keepsakes, that are either heavily focused on or are used in highly unlikely but deeply relevant ways, such as when Raju captures Bhim with his religious necklace. Drawing from old Hindu myths, this film is rife with the kind of dramatic ironies and outrageous coincidences that my Western brain would expect from Shakespeare or Greek tragedies. For example, that Bhim is Raju's target and that they become best friends without knowing. Or that Bhim's method of saving Raju's life is also coincidentally the thing that outs him as the enemy. Or Bhim running into Sita close to the end of the movie, etc. Also, unlike Western films of late, RRR is highly emotional. Western cynicism has made us pretty allergic to drawn-out scenes of emotive sadness, so you don't see a lot of it these days. But again, the performances in this movie are quite solid, so hey, it worked for me. This all attributes to the film's designation as an epic, and a wonderfully executed one at that. Especially in this particular time of movie history, with the MCU showing signs of exhaustion and people starting to finally tire of the excessive CGI, it's just really refreshing to see a movie with scenes that require coordination of hundreds of extras. I mean, just look at these shots. Movies like Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago, The Red Violin, Gangs of New York required tens of assistant directors coordinating to create a sweeping sense of scale and wonder, and I'm so happy to see something similar in this movie. Whereas in Doctor Strange 2, Elizabeth Olsen never met the guy you see her currently murdering. Now, that's not to say that RRR doesn't have some lackluster effects, it definitely does, and the CGI is abundantly obvious at points to the point of detriment. But still, when you have a film with the kind of lofty aspirations associated with epics, like themes of brotherly love, betrayal, national integrity, the immersive benefits of shots like these cannot be understated. Also, another thing I love about this movie is the camera. The camera freaking moves. No lazy post-production virtual cameras, very few scenes purely on a tripod. The camera sweeps in, sweeps out, it tracks, it goes with the action, it works in concert with the emotional stakes. There's nothing even remotely lethargic about this movie's production. Point is, great cinema is created on set or on location in front of the lens of a camera, not solely in an air-conditioned room full of computers. That's not to hate on CGI artists, they work very hard, they're extremely talented, but the magic is in front of the lens. Which brings me to the dance numbers, which of course you'd have to be without a pulse not to appreciate. The first one in particular is like a hilarious British imperialism rendition of You Got Served. I mean, look at this. We've got the cringe white guy trying to bust a move. Then we cut to the black guy who's like, he's no stranger to white people trampling on his country. Then the black guy teams up with Raju in a moment of screw the colonizer solidarity. Yeah, it's on the nose. It's goofy, but it's fun. And similar to the action, I think the film does a good job in making the musical numbers in service of the narrative momentum or character work, rather than just a short reprieve from the storytelling. For example, when Bhim is being tortured, the musical number brought us into his perspective, to the mental space he had to occupy in order to elevate himself above the pain. Kind of a moment of magical realism through song. Having said all that, there are some things about the film that I wasn't crazy about. Obviously, everybody would prefer that the CGI budget triple, but aside from that, the character Jenny, it wasn't clear to me what her purpose was. At first, it seems like she's going to be Bhim's love interest, but that fizzles and nothing comes out of it. She doesn't help Bhim or Raju in the final act. It seems like her primary purpose is to be one of those progressive anti-racist time traveler characters that's best exemplified by Emma Stone's character in The Help. You know, the early 60s Southern girl who spontaneously achieves the moral compass of your average 2012 NPR listener. I'm not very fond of this trope, and Jenny at best seems to be a token gesture at redeeming the British colonizer, as if to protect the film from the accusation of designating an entire population as evil, and at worst, to validate Indian males' sexual appeal by having a white girl thirst for them while they dance, which is undeniably what's happening in this scene. It seems a bit counter to the Indian nationalist message if the British female gaze is still the thing that anoints our heroes as virile or libidinous, etc., but whatever, this scene is still awesome. Point is, if you're going to put a character in this movie, she should at least have some sort of arc, otherwise she kind of just feels like a prop. I could not be happier that one of the top films of 2022 is 3 hours long, includes hundreds of extras, is extremely precise with its on-set coordination, that it isn't at all cynical, and it introduced me to a new cultural cinema. So needless to say, I highly recommend RRR if you haven't seen it. It's on Netflix, it's easy to find. Be sure to catch me on Twitch, where right now I am playing Horizon 2. I might also try to dip into some multiverses with my Discord community. Links for the Twitch and the Discord are in the description. Also, I know there's been a glaring omission in my review uploads. I have not yet seen Nope because it's not out here yet in Finland, but as soon as I get an opportunity to see it, I will definitely be sharing my thoughts. So that's it for now. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos, and as always, thanks for watching, guys. Peace.